Hello, I would like to share some brief thoughts I've been having on armies and war. I think the question of do you support the army or do you support war is a pretty loaded question because it assumes many different things about what is an army and what is war. War can be different things. It can exist on many different levels. You can have, I think, a war of words. You can have a war in which torture is okay. You can have a war in which it's not. Obviously there's always, gray areas in all of these questions, but war means different things. And, generally speaking, I don't think of myself as someone who supports the army, but there are situations in which I see it as okay and necessary to organize with other people to defend yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, to organize with others to get the job done better. Even if it does include organizing with guns, I think that sometimes that might be necessary. I just don't generally think it is. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense for me to say that I'm against the army when there would be cases in which I would be fine with people organizing and forming a type of army. But I think that's kind of a dangerous line of reasoning too, because pretty much all acts of aggression are made with a justification of self-defense. They always say that we're doing this to protect ourselves in some way. So to simply say that violence or engaging in a type of war is okay if it's for self-defense is still a little bit shaky. I think it's still a little bit dangerous to say that because what constitutes self-defense and what constitutes aggression. There has to be a line somewhere, and it can always shift back and forth. And so I think that's an interesting part of this discussion too, is, what does that mean to say that certain types of war is okay and certain parts is not? Like, what is an atrocity? What is a war crime? If war is okay, but there's a crime within war, like, how do you determine what that crime is, and how do you determine if a war is just? Personally, I don't believe in there being a wartime and a not wartime, like all of a sudden the ethics of humanity change magically and you enter a war zone in which killing people is all of a sudden okay. In a non-immediate self-defense sort of way, like when you enter a war zone, all of a sudden it becomes okay to kill people even if they're not about to kill you. That's what I think makes a war zone incredibly messed up. I think that we're all just living in the world and we choose to project whatever set of ethics we want to onto that world. And I think it is our duty to always project a peaceful image onto the world. It may contain certain aggressive people, but that doesn't mean that the ethics of the world is changing. It just means that there are a few random oddballs out there. Let's call them oddballs. A big problem I do have with our current situation is that our modern armies are not voluntary. It seems very hypocritical to me that we have realized that the draft is fucked up, that the idea of young people being forced into the army because the state decides that it's best for that society in terms of national security, or whatever justification they want to concoct. The idea of non-voluntary service into the army is incredibly messed up. It's a form of slavery, and for the purposes of a very dangerous goal, the idea of using people to engage in war against their will, that's just, everyone agrees that's messed up. But for some reason we are still okay with people funding war on a non-voluntary basis. I never chose to fund the war in Afghanistan or any war that happens, outside of this nation or inside of this nation by the state. I don't agree with that war, and I think that it's just as messed up that my money is forcefully being taken from me to pay for that war. And so that's what really bothers me, first off, about our national armies, is that the reason they are being supported by me is not because I choose to. I see the National Army as just another group of people with guns that they get their money through extortion. And that's how they differ from other groups of people with guns. Most groups of people with guns believe that they are firing those guns for a just cause and they're defending justice and maintaining order. in the world. And sometimes that's true, and there are cases in which I really agree with what the army does. Like sometimes the army is what is used to save people during a flood, or, rescue people in whatever situation, or maybe they use the army to translate, or to decode, or to help with information in some way. Or like there's many ways in which we could use this group of people for good. The only problem I have with it is that, they also do some pretty messed up things, like I don't agree with the war in Afghanistan, and I have my reasons, but I don't want to get into that for this video. It's a pretty big topic and fairly inflammatory. And I don't agree with most of the ongoing wars that we have in the Middle East. It's just messed up. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's not the answer that makes any sense to me, that we should be doing this at this point. Yeah, I do have issue with most modern wars, and I do have issue with most modern armies. They could be used for good, but then again, the mob could do good things. Like the mob could, even though they extort people and they threaten and they are pretty violent, they do good things once in a while, I'm sure. But I don't think that exonerates them from the other things that they have done that are obviously wrong. It'd be like if a firefighter, like someone who we always respect, like a firefighter is never controversial. They're always loved by a community. All they do is go in and save people from fires and rescue cats from trees and stuff like that. Like they're just, like, how could you be against a firefighter? It'd be like if a firefighter all of a sudden shot someone because he felt they were a threat to society. It'd be like, okay, well, that was messed up. We still like you because you're a firefighter, but we have to deal with this whole you're killing people kind of thing. That's not cool. We need to deal with that and separate it from the whole firefighter issue. So that's how I feel about state armies doing things that are good once in a while. I think we should separate it to two different issues and consider it that way. But I think it is very complicated. I don't have anything against individuals who happen to be a part of the army. I think that in and of itself doesn't make anyone a bad person, obviously. Doesn't matter what army you're a part of. I think even if you joined, the Nazis, and maybe you're trying to make them less oppressive and less racist and whatever, you're trying to bring them in a more progressive direction. That could be the case. Maybe the most effective way of beating the Nazis is to join the Nazis. Who knows? That's the argument many people use for the government. Even if they are against the government, they will say that the most effective way of combating statism and, the monopoly solution is to join the monopoly and try to make it less monopolistic from the inside. I think it's kind of twisted, but that is an idea that exists, and it's possible. The pragmatic approach. A related topic is that I find the idea of vigilante justice to be very interesting, because if you look up the original definition of vigilante, a vigilante and vigilante justice is just pursuing justice without due process. And due process is just taking into account people's rights when you pursue justice. That's due process. And that is very loaded, because, what are people's rights, and how do you assure that you're taking into account those rights? But that's basically what it means. And so many governments who do not respect people's rights are vigilantes. They are, by the classical definition, vigilantes. And many people who have nothing to do with government, who are just working on their own and pursuing justice in whatever way they do, if they are trying to take into account human rights, however that is defined, then they would not be vigilantes. They would be non-vigilantes? I'm not sure. But I guess this all just begs the question, what is justice? If justice has nothing to do with the state, and if anyone can carry it out, then what is it? What is it that defines it? Is it equality? Is it minimization of suffering? If so, suffering among who? Among all animals? Among humans? Among certain humans? So, yeah. If anyone wants to share those thoughts, the thoughts that are in your brain, share them with me if you'd like to. please feel free.